I watched 60 years of my life turn to ash in my son-in-law's hands. Every photograph, every memory, my wedding day, my children's first steps, my husband's last smile before cancer took him, all of it, curling, blackening, disappearing into smoke, while Marcus stood there with that satisfied smirk on his face, telling me, "Your past doesn't matter anymore, Helen. Only our future." He thought he was erasing me, making me small, forcing me to forget who I was before I became the grandmother living in their guest house. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the real fire was about to start, and this time, I'd be holding the match. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 78 years old, and this is the story of how I lost everything that mattered and found something I didn't know I still had: myself. Let me take you back 6 months before that fire, back when I still believed that family meant something, back when I thought moving in with my daughter Claire was the beginning of a peaceful chapter in my life, not the end of my dignity. My husband Daniel died 3 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 4 months from diagnosis to goodbye. We'd been married for 52 years, and suddenly I was alone in a house that felt like a mausoleum. Every room whispered his name. Every corner held a ghost. Claire called me every week. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone in that big house. Come live with us. We have plenty of space." Marcus agrees it's the right thing to do. Marcus, my son-in-law. I'd never warmed to him, not in the 8 years he'd been married to my daughter. There was something about the way he smiled. Too wide, too quick, like he was always performing. But Claire loved him, and my daughter's happiness had always been my priority. So I sold my house. The house where Daniel and I raised our 3 children. The house where we celebrated birthdays and Christmases and Tuesday nights that meant nothing to anyone but us. I sold it and moved into the guest house behind Claire and Marcus's property in Riverside. Guest house made it sound charming. It was a converted garage, 400 square feet with a kitchenette, a bathroom the size of a closet, and one main room that served as bedroom, living room, and dining room combined. But it had a window that looked out onto Claire's garden, and I convinced myself that would be enough. I brought 3 things with me: my clothes, my books, and 17 albums of photographs spanning 6 decades. Everything else went to estate sales or Goodwill or the dump. Those photo albums were my life in paper form. My parents, long dead. My siblings, scattered across the country. Daniel in his Navy uniform, looking so young I wanted to cry. Claire and her brothers as children, covered in mud and joy. Birthdays, graduations, weddings. The visual proof that I had lived, that I had mattered, that my life had been full and real and mine. I arranged them on the small bookshelf Marcus had, grudgingly moved into the guest house. Sometimes, late at night, I'd pull one down and lose myself in 1973 or 1989 or 2004. The past became my companion in a way the present never quite managed to be. The first 3 months were tolerable. Claire would bring me dinner twice a week. We'd have coffee in the mornings in her kitchen. I'd babysit my grandson Tommy when they needed an evening out. I tried to make myself useful without making myself a burden, that delicate balance that elderly parents everywhere struggle to maintain. But Marcus was always there, watching, commenting. "Helen, you don't need to leave your lights on all night. Electricity costs money." "Helen, could you try to park your car further down the driveway? It's blocking the view from our living room." "Helen, I noticed you've been using our washing machine a lot. Maybe we should set up a schedule." Small things, petty things, things that Claire would laugh off with a "Marcus, come on," but never actually stop him from saying. Each comment was a paper cut, insignificant on its own, but collectively bleeding me dry. Then the comments turned to my photographs. "Why do you need all those old albums, Helen? You know everything's digital now. We could scan them for you, free up some space." Don't you think it's a little morbid, spending so much time looking at pictures of dead people? Claire's been talking about converting your space into a proper home office. Those bookshelves would have to go anyway. Might be time to downsize your collection." I smiled. I nodded. I changed the subject. But something cold was settling in my chest, the slow, creeping realization that I had made a terrible mistake. I'd given up my independence for the illusion of family. I'd traded my home for a converted garage and a son-in-law who saw me as an obstacle to his perfect life, but I kept quiet. What else could I do? Where else could I go? My other children lived across the country, busy with their own lives. My savings, after selling the house and accounting for Daniel's medical bills, were substantial, but not infinite. I was 78 years old, and the world doesn't have much use for elderly women with nowhere to go. So I stayed small. I stayed quiet. I stayed grateful for the scraps of family I was allowed to have. Then Marcus decided even that was too much. It was a Tuesday in October. I remember because Claire had taken Tommy to his piano lesson, and I was in the main house using the kitchen to bake cookies, something I'd done every Tuesday for the past month. It was my way of contributing, of earning my place. Marcus came home early from work. I heard his car in the driveway, heard the slam of his door. When he walked into the kitchen, his face was red, his jaw tight. "What are you doing?" I looked up from the mixing bowl. "Making cookies. Claire said Tommy loves the chocolate chip ones, so I thought, this isn't your kitchen, Helen." The words were so sharp, so sudden that I actually flinched. I know. I'm sorry. I should have asked. I just thought, "You're always here." He moved closer, and I instinctively stepped back. "You're always in our space, using our things, acting like this is your house." "Marcus, I didn't mean, do you know what Claire and I gave up to take you in? Do you have any idea?" My hands were shaking. "I'm grateful. I truly am. If I'm overstepping..." "Overstepping?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're living in our backyard, eating our food, running up our utilities. And for what? So you can sit in that glorified shed and stare at pictures of people who don't even exist anymore? Don't talk about my family like that." The words came out before I could stop them, sharp and sudden in mine. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. "Your family? Your family is gone, Helen. Daniel's dead. Your parents are dead. Those pictures are just paper. They don't matter." "They matter to me." "Well, maybe that's the problem." He was closer now, close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. "Maybe you need to let go of the past and start living in the present. Our present. The one where Claire and I are trying to build a future and you're just taking up space." I wanted to say something cutting, something devastating. I wanted to defend myself, to stand tall, to be the woman I used to be. Instead, I whispered, "I'll go back to the guest house." "Good idea." He turned away, then paused. "And Helen, clean up this mess. I don't want Claire coming home to your baking project all over our counter." I cleaned. I threw out the half-made cookie dough. I washed every bowl, every spoon, every measuring cup. And then I walked back to my converted garage and sat on the edge of my bed and cried. For the first time since Daniel's funeral. That night, I heard them fighting. The walls were thin enough that sounds carried from the main house to my little space. Claire's voice, high and defensive. Marcus's voice, steady and reasonable, explaining why I was becoming a problem, why something needed to change, why they needed their space back. I pressed my pillow over my ears and prayed for sleep. 3 weeks later, Marcus burned my photographs. I'd gone into town for a doctor's appointment. Routine checkup, nothing serious. Claire had offered to drive me, but I'd insisted on taking my own car. I wanted the independence, the illusion that I was still capable, still autonomous. The appointment ran long. By the time I got back to Riverside, it was almost evening. The sky, that particular shade of orange that always made me think of autumn in Vermont, where Daniel and I had honeymooned. I pulled into the driveway and immediately knew something was wrong. There was smoke coming from the backyard. Not a lot, not enough to be an emergency, just a thin gray stream rising into the evening air. My first thought was that Marcus was grilling. My second thought, the one that turned my blood to ice, was that the smoke was coming from near my guest house. I got out of the car and walked around to the back. My legs felt weak, my heart hammering in my chest with a dread I couldn't name yet. Marcus was standing next to a metal fire pit I'd never seen before. He was feeding something into the flames, page by page, methodically and calmly. My photo albums. "What are you doing?" The words came out strangled, barely human. He looked up and there was no guilt in his expression, no shame, just that same satisfied smirk I'd seen a dozen times before. "Making space," he said simply. "You have too much stuff, Helen. Claire and I talked about it and we agreed. You need to let go of the past." "Those are mine." I moved forward, reaching for the album stacked beside him, but he shifted his body to block me. "Were yours," he corrected. "Now they're just trash." I watched Daniel's face curl and blacken. I watched my wedding day dissolve into ash. I watched Tommy as a newborn, Claire's face exhausted and radiant, disappear into smoke. "Please." I was begging now, tears streaming down my face. "Please stop. Those are all I have left." "That's exactly the problem, Helen." He tossed another handful of photographs into the flames. "You're living in the past. You're stuck in this loop of memory, and it's not healthy. Claire's worried about you. We both are." "Claire knows about this?" It was her idea. He said it so casually, so matter-of-factly that I knew it was a lie. But the lie was almost worse than the truth, because it told me exactly what Marcus thought of me, that I was so weak, so pathetic, that I'd believe my own daughter would do this to me. "You're lying." "Am I?" He smiled. "Why don't you go ask her?" I turned toward the main house, but Marcus caught my arm. His grip was tight, painful. "You want to know the truth, Helen? The truth is that you're a burden. You've been a burden since the day you moved in. Claire's too nice to say it, but I'm not. We don't want you here. We never did. We took you in because we felt obligated, but that obligation has an expiration date. Let go of me. This house is ours. This life is ours. Your past doesn't matter, only our future." He released my arm and gestured to the fire. "So, I'm helping you move forward, whether you like it or not." I stood there, watching 60 years of my life burn, watching Marcus feed page after page into the flames with the detached efficiency of someone taking out the trash. And something inside me, something I thought had died with Daniel, roared back to life. I didn't confront Claire that night. I didn't scream or cry or make a scene. I walked back to my guest house, locked the door, and sat in the dark for 3 hours. When Daniel was sick, during those last terrible weeks, he'd held my hand and made me promise something. "Don't let anyone make you small," he'd whispered. "Don't let anyone tell you that you don't matter. Promise me, Helen." I'd promised. And then he'd died, and I'd spent 3 years making myself as small as possible, trying to disappear into the corners of other people's lives. Marcus had burned my memories, but he'd also burned away the last of my willingness to be invisible. I turned on the light and pulled out my phone. My estate lawyer, Robert Chen, had handled the sale of my house and the management of Daniel's life insurance payout. I'd used most of it to pay off the house and medical bills, but there was still a substantial sum left. Invested, managed, sitting in accounts I rarely thought about because thinking about money made me think about Daniel. I called Robert's emergency number. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Helen, is everything all right?" "Robert, I need to know exactly how much money I have. Everything. Investments, savings, life insurance, all of it." There was a pause. "It's almost midnight. Can this wait until morning?" "No." Something in my voice must have convinced him, because I heard rustling, the sound of a laptop opening, keys clicking. "Give me a minute," he said. I waited. Outside my window, I could still see the faint glow of the fire pit. Marcus had gone inside, but the embers of my past were still smoldering. "Okay," Robert said finally, "including your savings, the remainder of Daniel's life insurance, your investment portfolio, and the bonds you've been holding, you're looking at just over $900,000. The number hit me like cold water. $900,000. I'd known there was money. Daniel had been careful and I'd never been extravagant, but I hadn't realized how much. "Helen? You still there?" "I'm here." My mind was racing. Robert, if I wanted to move that money quickly, donate it, I mean, how fast could we make that happen? "Donate? Helen, that's your security, your future. You can't just—" "How fast, Robert?" Another pause. Longer this time. "If you're absolutely certain, we could have it transferred by tomorrow evening. But Helen, I strongly advise against making any major financial decisions when you're emotional. If something's happened—" "Something has happened," I said quietly, "and for the first time in 3 years, I'm thinking clearly." I told him what I wanted. He tried to talk me out of it. I could hear the concern in his voice, the professional responsibility warring with his personal fondness for the crazy old woman who was about to give away nearly $1 million. But I was done being talked out of things, done being managed and handled and treated like a problem to be solved. By the time I hung up, it was past 1 a.m, and I had a plan. I didn't sleep. I sat at my small table and made a list on the back of an envelope, the only paper I had left, now that my photographs were ash. The list had 2 columns, truth and consequences. Under truth, I wrote, "Marcus burned my photographs. He thinks I'm powerless. Claire either knows or doesn't care. I've been living like a ghost. I have money. I have choices. I am not dead yet." Under consequences, I wrote, "I will lose my daughter. I will be alone. I will have to rebuild my life at 78. I will never see Tommy grow up. This might kill me." I stared at the lists for a long time. Then I added one more line under consequences. "I will know I fought back. That was enough." Morning came slowly. I showered, dressed in the nicest outfit I'd brought, a navy blue dress Daniel had always loved, and waited. At 9 o'clock, I called 3 places: a homeless shelter 2 towns over that I'd volunteered at 20 years ago, a children's hospital that had cared for Claire when she'd had pneumonia as a child, and a pancreatic cancer research foundation. I told them each the same thing, and I'd like to make a donation, a substantial one, today if possible. By noon, Robert had set everything in motion. By 5 o'clock, the transfers were complete: $300,000 to the homeless shelter, $300,000 to the children's hospital, $300,000 to cancer research. I kept $10,000 for myself, enough for a cheap apartment and a few months of living expenses while I figured out what came next. And then I went to tell Claire and Marcus what I'd done. They were having dinner when I knocked on the door. A normal Tuesday evening, chicken on the stove, Tommy doing homework at the table, Claire setting out plates. Marcus answered. His expression shifted when he saw me, from annoyance to something darker, something that looked almost like contempt. "Helen, we're about to eat. I need to speak with you and Claire, both of you. Now's not a good time. Now is the only time." I pushed past him, the first time I'd ever done such a thing, and walked into their kitchen. Claire looked up, surprised. "Mom, is everything okay?" "No," I said simply. "Everything is not okay." Marcus closed the door slowly. I could feel the tension in the room ratcheting up, could see Claire's confusion, Tommy's wide-eyed curiosity. "Tommy, sweetheart," I said gently, "could you go to your room for a few minutes? The adults need to talk." "Mom." Tommy looked at Claire, who nodded. "It's fine, baby. Go finish your homework upstairs." When Tommy was gone, I turned to Marcus. "You burned my photographs yesterday." Claire's face went white. "What? He didn't tell you?" I kept my eyes on Marcus. He took every photo album I owned and burned them in a fire pit, told me my past didn't matter, that I needed to let go, that I was a burden. Marcus. Claire's voice was shaking. She's exaggerating, Marcus said smoothly. I was trying to help. She's been obsessing over those old photos, living in the past instead of focusing on the present. I thought, you thought you'd destroy 60 years of my life without asking? My voice was steady, calm. I'd spent all night preparing for this moment, and I wasn't going to waste it on anger. You thought you had the right to decide what mattered to me. Mom, I didn't know. Claire moved toward me. I swear I didn't. I believe you. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize anymore. When had she become so small? When had she started apologizing for her husband's cruelty instead of standing against it? But it doesn't matter now. What do you mean? I mean, I've made a decision. I turned back to Marcus. You wanted me to let go of the past? Congratulations. I did. I let go of everything. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or the first hint of concern. What did you do, Helen? I gave it away. All of it. The money from Daniel's life insurance, the sale of my house, my savings, my investments, $900,000. I donated every penny this afternoon. The silence was absolute. Claire spoke first, her voice barely a whisper. You... what? I gave it to charity, a homeless shelter, a children's hospital, and a cancer research foundation. People who actually need it. People who won't treat it, or me, like garbage. Marcus's face had gone from red to white to purple. You stupid, vindictive old woman. Do you have any idea what you've done? I know exactly what I've done. I've taken back my power. That was Claire's inheritance. That was supposed to be mine, I interrupted. It was mine. Daniel left it to me, and I got to decide what to do with it. Mom. Claire was crying now. Why? Why would you do this? That hurt more than anything Marcus could say. The tears, the betrayal in her voice, the implicit accusation that I was the one who'd done something wrong. Because your husband burned my life, I said quietly. And you let him. I didn't know. But you would have told me to let it go anyway, wouldn't you? You would have said Marcus was trying to help, that I needed to move forward, that I was holding on to the past too tightly. I smiled, and it felt like my face was cracking. So I moved forward, just not the way he expected. Marcus stepped toward me, and I saw something in his face that made me genuinely afraid. You're going to regret this. Maybe. But at least I'll regret something I chose to do, not something that was done to me. Get out. His voice was low, dangerous. Get out of my house. Tonight. I want you gone. Marcus, Claire started, but he cut her off. No, she made her choice. She wants to be alone. Fine, she can be alone. I want her off our property by morning. I looked at my daughter one last time, waiting, hoping, praying that she'd stand up, that she'd tell her husband he was wrong, that she'd choose her mother over his wounded pride. But Claire just stood there, crying silently, and I knew I'd lost her years ago. I'd just been too stubborn to admit it. Goodbye, Claire, I said softly. I love you. I always will. And then I walked out of their house for the last time. I packed that night. Everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases and 3 boxes, a life reduced to what you could carry. I loaded it into my car by flashlight, refusing to turn on the lights, refusing to give Marcus the satisfaction of watching me scramble. At midnight, I drove away from Riverside without looking back. Robert had helped me find a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, a studio in a building that had seen better days. But it was mine. No guest house, no converted garage, just a simple space where no one could tell me I was taking up too much room. The first week was the hardest. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, panicking, wondering what I'd done. $900,000, my security, my safety net, gone. But then I'd remember Marcus's face as he fed my memories into the fire, and I'd feel that same fierce satisfaction all over again. I called my sons, Michael in Seattle, David in Boston, told them what had happened. They were shocked, concerned, angry on my behalf. Michael offered to fly down immediately. David wanted to confront Marcus. "Don't," I told them both. "This is done. I'm moving forward." "But Mom, $900,000 was mine to give away, and I'm not sorry." I wasn't sure if I meant it, but I said it anyway because saying it made it feel true. 6 months have passed since that night. 6 months of learning how to be Helen Morrison again, instead of Claire's mother or Daniel's widow or the old woman in the guest house. I got a job, part-time, nothing glamorous. I work at the library 3 days a week, shelving books and helping people find what they're looking for. It doesn't pay much, but it's enough, and more importantly, it's mine. I've started taking photographs again. Nothing fancy, just my phone camera capturing moments that matter only to me. A sunset, a cup of coffee, the way the light hits the library stacks at 4 o'clock. I'm building a new collection of memories, one image at a time. The homeless shelter sent me a letter last month. They're naming their new wing after Daniel. The Children's Hospital is funding 3 new rooms. The Cancer Research Foundation called to tell me my donation is funding a promising new trial. My money is doing good in the world, real, tangible good, and somehow that matters more than I expected it to. Claire called once, 2 months after I left. She was crying, apologizing, begging me to reconsider, to come back, to forgive Marcus. "He's sorry," she kept saying. "He didn't mean it. He was stressed about work and he made a mistake." I listened. I let her talk. And then I said, "The photographs are still gone, Claire. And so am I. She hasn't called since. I miss her. I miss Tommy. I miss the life I thought I'd have. Grandchildren and family dinners and the comfortable rhythm of belonging somewhere. But I don't miss being small. Here's what I've learned in these 6 months of being alone. Burning photographs doesn't erase the past. The memories still exist. They're just in my head now instead of on paper, which makes them mine in a way they never were before. Marcus couldn't take those. No one can. Money is just money. I spent 78 years believing it was security, but security isn't something you can deposit in a bank. Real security comes from knowing you can survive, that you can rebuild, that you're stronger than you thought. Family isn't always the people you're related to. Sometimes family is the librarian who brings you coffee without asking, the neighbor who invites you to her book club, the volunteer at the Cancer Foundation who calls you a hero for funding research that might save someone else's Daniel. And here's the hardest truth. Sometimes love isn't enough. I loved Claire. I still love Claire. But love without respect is just another word for suffering, and I'm done suffering for the comfort of other people. Was giving away $900,000 the smart thing to do? Probably not. Robert still calls me occasionally, checking in, gently suggesting that I could have handled it differently. Was it worth it? Every single day, I wake up in my small apartment, make my coffee, and look at the photographs on my phone, the new memories I'm creating, the proof that I'm still here, still living, still mattering. And the answer is yes. Marcus wanted to erase my past. He wanted to make me believe that my life before his family didn't count, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of belonging he decided to give me. Instead, I erased his future, the inheritance he was counting on, the financial security he'd married into, the comfortable retirement he thought was coming. I took it all and gave it to people who needed it more than he deserved it. Some people might call that vindictive. Some might call it foolish. I call it justice. Because here's the thing about fire. It destroys, yes, but it also purifies. It burns away the dead wood, the rot, the things that are no longer serving you. Marcus burned my photographs, and in doing so, he burned away the last of my willingness to be small, to be grateful, to be less than I am just to make his life easier. He wanted to teach me that my past didn't matter. Instead, I taught him that I did. I'm 78 years old. I live in a studio apartment. I work at a library for minimum wage. I have $10,000 to my name and no family photos to hang on my walls, and I've never felt more free. My name is Helen Morrison. My husband is gone. My daughter chose her husband over me. My grandchild is growing up without me. But I'm still here, still standing, still fighting, still mattering. Marcus thought he could burn me away like he burned those photographs, something old, something disposable, something that only existed in the past. He was wrong. I'm not the past. I'm not a memory. I'm not someone's burden or someone's obligation. I'm Helen. And I burned down his expectations, his assumptions, his certainty that old women like me don't have any power left. $900,000 went up in flames, metaphorically speaking. But this time, I was the one holding the match. And God, it felt good to watch it burn.